The transport ship shuddered as it docked with the Viridian Reach station. Taman pressed his hand against the cold window, watching the massive asteroid colony rotate slowly in the darkness of space. This was his new home, his punishment. 3 months ago, he had been a security chief on Earth's outer defense ring. He had stopped a pirate raid, saved 200 lives, and destroyed 3 enemy ships. He had also violated 17 protocols and ignored 4 direct orders. The review board called him reckless. They called him dangerous. They sent him here to the edge of explored space where he couldn't cause trouble. The airlock opened with a hiss. Taman grabbed his single bag and walked into the station. The corridor was busy with aliens of different species. Tall reptilian saurians walked beside insectoid Vrin. Small floating creatures that looked like jellyfish drifted past. A few other humans moved through the crowd, but not many. Humans were rare out here. A saurian officer waited at the checkpoint. His scales were deep green and his eyes were cold. "You are the human, Taman." "Yes, sir. I am Commander Velthar. I run security here." The saurian looked him up and down. "I read your file." "Very impressive." "Very stupid," Taman said nothing. He had learned that silence was often the best response. Velthar turned and started walking. Taman followed. "This colony has 300 permanent residents," Velthar said. "We mine rare minerals. We do research. We follow rules. We do not have pirate attacks here. We do not have emergencies. We have peace and order." "Understood, sir. Do you?" Velthar stopped and turned. "Because your record shows you do not understand peace. You understand only fighting. You are like that small Earth creature we read about. The honey badger. Small, aggressive, always picking fights it cannot win." Behind them, 2 Vrin scientists clicked their mandibles in what Taman recognized as laughter. The term spread quickly through the station. By evening, everyone would know. The humans had sent them a honey badger. Velthar showed him to the security office. It was small and empty. "You will monitor the sensor grid. You will file reports. You will not make decisions without approval. You will not take action without clearance. If you follow these rules, your time here will pass quietly. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good." Velthar left without another word. Taman sat at his new desk and activated the console. The sensor grid appeared on the screen. The Viridian Reach colony sat in the middle of a dense asteroid field. Mining outposts dotted the map like small lights in the darkness. Everything looked calm. Everything looked safe. That evening, Taman found the mess hall. It was a large room with tables for different species. The saurians sat together eating some kind of raw meat. The Vrin gathered around a nutrient dispensing station. The humans had a small corner with 8 seats. One of them was occupied. A woman with short black hair looked up as he approached. "You must be the new guy. I'm Hygiene, engineering. Taman, security, I heard." Everyone heard. She smiled slightly. "The honey badger." He sat down across from her. "Does it bother you? The name? Should it?" She ate a bite of her meal. "Honey badgers are survivors. They're tough. They don't back down. Could be worse things to be called." "That's what I thought. Most people here don't understand humans," Hyejin said. "They think we're reckless because we act fast. They think we're aggressive because we don't spend 3 weeks debating every decision. They've never had to survive the way we have." Across the mess hall, a group of saurians laughed loudly. One of them pointed at Taman. More laughter followed. Taman ignored them and ate his food. "Don't let them get to you," Hyejin said. "They'll get bored eventually." "I'm not worried about them." Taman looked at his data pad. "I'm worried about the sensor readings. What about them?" "There are gaps. Small ones. Probably nothing." He scrolled through the data. "But we just did a survey of the deep asteroid field. Found some valuable crystal deposits? Yeah, biggest find in 5 years. They're planning the mining operation now. The same survey also detected strange energy signatures, different from anything in the database." Hyejin leaned forward. "What kind of energy?" "Unknown. The report says it needs more study. They want to run detailed scans over the next 6 months before they send anyone to investigate." 6 months? Hyejin frowned. "That's a long time. Standard protocol for the saurians. They don't like rushing into anything. What would you do?" Taman looked at her. "I'd send a recon team tomorrow. Small, fast, careful. Get eyes on whatever that energy signature is. Better to know now than wish we knew later." "Did you suggest this?" "I'm planning to. Tomorrow morning." First meeting with the command staff. Hyejin smiled. They're going to love you. The next morning, Taemin stood in the command center. Commander Velthar sat at the main console. Dr. Krell, a senior Vryn scientist, stood beside him. 3 other officers filled the room. All of them were aliens. Taemin was the only human. He presented his analysis of the sensor data. He showed the gaps in coverage. He explained the unknown energy signatures. He recommended immediate reconnaissance. Velthar listened without expression. When Taemin finished, the Saurian commander leaned back in his chair. No. Sir, we should at least know. Velthar's voice was firm. We have protocols. We follow them, we study. We analyze, we plan. We do not rush into unknown situations because one human has a feeling. Dr. Krell's mandibles clicked. The energy signatures are likely natural phenomena. Magnetic fields. Radiation pockets. Nothing dangerous. But we don't know that, Taemin said. Exactly, Velthar replied. We do not know. So we will study until we do know. This is how civilized species operate. We think before we act. We calculate before we move. We are not honey badgers, sniffing at every shadow and attacking every unknown. The other officers made sounds of agreement. Taemin felt his jaw tighten. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that sometimes waiting was more dangerous than acting. But he knew it would do no good. They had already decided he was reckless. They had already decided humans didn't understand proper procedure. Dismissed, Velthar said. Taemin left the command center and returned to his office. He pulled up the sensor data again. Those gaps bothered him. The energy signatures bothered him. Something felt wrong, like an itch he couldn't scratch. That night he stood in the observation deck. The asteroid field stretched out before him, dark and infinite. Somewhere out there was something unknown, something the sensors couldn't quite see. Hyejin found him there. I heard the meeting didn't go well. They think I'm paranoid, are you? Taemin watched the asteroids drift slowly past. Honey badgers don't worry about what others think. They worry about what's in the dark. Is there something in the dark? I don't know. He turned to face her. But I'm going to find out. Hyejin nodded slowly. Then I guess we'd better get to work. They didn't know it yet, but in the deep tunnels of the asteroid field, something ancient was stirring. Something hungry. Something that had been waiting for a very long time, and it was almost ready to wake up. The mining drone disappeared on a Tuesday morning. One moment it was transmitting data from Tunnel 17. The next moment, nothing. Just empty static on the communication line. Taemin saw the alert on his console and immediately called the mining supervisor. The supervisor, a patient Vryn named Telmore, assured him it was nothing. Drones malfunctioned sometimes. The deep tunnels interfered with signals. A recovery team would retrieve it within the week. 3 days later, another drone vanished. Same tunnel system, deeper section. Again, Telmore had an explanation. Old equipment. Scheduled for replacement. Nothing to worry about, but Taemin worried. That was his job. That was what honey badgers did. He found Hyejin in the engineering bay working on a power relay. I need your help, he said. She looked up from her work. Let me guess. The missing drones, how did you know? Because I've been tracking the same anomalies you have. Power fluctuations in the deep tunnels. Communication static. 3 survey teams reporting equipment failures in the same sector. She set down her tools. Everyone says it's normal. But it's not normal. It's a pattern. Can you reprogram a maintenance drone? Taemin asked. Make it stealthier. Better sensors? Hyejin smiled. Already working on it. Come back in 2 hours. Taemin spent those 2 hours reviewing everything he could find about the deep asteroid tunnels. The Viridian Reach had been mining this field for 12 years. The tunnels went deep, some over 50 kilometers into the rock. The deeper you went, the stranger the geology became. Crystal formations that shouldn't exist, temperature variations that made no sense, and now, equipment disappearing. He found the medical bay next. Bora, the human medical officer, was organizing supplies. She had joined the colony 6 months ago, transferring from a research station. She was practical and sharp, qualities Taemin appreciated. I need you to analyze something, he said, showing her his datapad. The survey teams in Sector 12 reported finding strange residue on their equipment. Sticky, dark, acidic. They cleaned it off and thought nothing of it. But I want to know what it is. Bora studied the images. Did they keep samples? One team did. It's in storage. Get it to me. I'll run every test we have. By evening, Heejin had the maintenance drone ready. It was smaller than standard models, equipped with enhanced sensors and stealth plating. It won't show up on regular scans, she explained. And it can go places where humans can't. Deep tunnels, low oxygen areas, anywhere. Perfect. Taemin downloaded a route into the drone's system. Send it to Sector 12, full scan. Record everything. The drone launched at midnight. For 6 hours, it traveled through the tunnel system, going deeper and deeper into the asteroid. The video feed showed narrow passages carved through dark stone. Occasionally, mining equipment appeared, sitting idle in the darkness. Then the drone found Tunnel 17, the last known location of the first missing drone. The tunnel was empty. No equipment, no drone. But the walls were different here. They looked melted, like something had burned through them. And there were marks on the floor. Long, dragging marks as if something heavy had been pulled deeper into the tunnel. What could do that? Hyejin whispered. They were watching the feed together in Taemin's office. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. The drone continued deeper. The tunnel twisted and turned, going places no human had explored. The temperature increased. The rock walls became smoother, almost organic in appearance. And then the drone's sensors detected something. Movement. The feed went black. Did we lose it? Hyejin asked. No. It's still transmitting data, just no video. Taemin studied the sensor readings. Temperature spike, electromagnetic interference, and biological matter. Biological? Out here? Before Taemin could answer, his console flashed red. Emergency alert. Outpost 4, one of the smaller mining stations, had lost contact. He ran to the command center. Commander Velthar was already there, looking annoyed rather than concerned. It is a communication relay failure, the Saurian said. These things happen. Sir, I have evidence of something in the deep tunnels. Something that— Evidence? Velthar's eyes narrowed. You have a malfunctioning drone and some blurry sensor data. This is not evidence. This is paranoia. Dr. Krell entered the command center. Commander, we should send a standard maintenance team to Outpost 4. Check the relay. Simple procedure. Agreed. Velthar turned to Taemin. You will not create panic with your theories. You will file a report on the drone incident and wait for proper analysis. Do you understand? Taemin wanted to argue. He wanted to grab Velthar and make him listen. But he simply nodded. Yes, sir. He left the command center and found Bora waiting in the corridor. Her face was pale. I analyzed the residue sample. And? It's biological. Silicon-based, not carbon like most life we know. Highly acidic. It breaks down metal and rock on contact. She handed him her data pad. Taemin, this isn't natural contamination. This is something alive, something that eats metal and stone. They found Hyejin and Kitae, the young mining technician, in the mess hall. Kitae had been working the deep mines for 8 months. He was quiet and careful, the kind of person who noticed details others missed. Have you seen anything strange in the tunnels? Taemin asked him. Kitae looked around nervously, then leaned forward. Shadows. I've seen shadows moving in the deep sections. I reported it. They said it was equipment casting reflections, but equipment doesn't move like that. Equipment doesn't feel alive. Why didn't you push harder? Hyejin asked. Because I'm 23 and this is my first real job. Nobody listens to the youngest human on the station. Kitae looked at Taemin. But I've read about you. They call you the honey badger. Like it's an insult. But honey badgers don't ignore danger. They face it. Taemin sat back. He had 4 pieces of information now. Missing equipment. Strange residue. Biological readings. And shadows in the deep. Separately, they meant nothing. Together, they painted a picture he didn't like. We need to go to Outpost 4, he said. See what really happened. Velthar will never approve that, Bora said. I know. So we won't ask. The next morning, relief teams arrived at Outpost 4. They found it empty. Completely empty. 12 workers gone. Their equipment melted into useless slag. The walls of the outpost showed the same melted appearance as the deep tunnels. And everywhere that strange residue. The colony declared a yellow alert. Not an emergency, but a caution. Commander Velthar called for a full investigation. Proper procedure. Detailed analysis. He estimated it would take 4 to 5 days to gather enough data to make an informed decision. Taemin stood in the observation deck, watching mining ships return to the main station. 4 to 5 days. In 4 to 5 days, whatever was out there could attack again. Could take more people, could get closer to the main colony. Yewan, the communications officer, joined him. She was the newest human on the station, transferred in just 2 weeks ago. I've been listening to the alien channels, she said quietly. They're scared, but they won't admit it. Their protocols don't have a solution for this. They've never faced something they can't categorize and study. We have, Taemin said. What? Humans. We've spent our entire history facing things we don't understand. Things that want to kill us. We didn't survive by studying them. We survived by adapting faster than they could adapt to us. Hyejin appeared on his other side. So what do? Taemin watched the asteroid field. Somewhere out there, something was waking up. Something hungry and ancient. The aliens would debate and study while it grew stronger. That was their way. But it wasn't the human way. We get ready, he said, because whatever's in the dark, it's coming. And when it does, they're going to need a honey badger. In the deepest tunnel of the asteroid, something stirred. It had slept for centuries, dormant in the cold and dark. But the mining, the drilling, the vibrations had awakened it. And now it was hungry. So very hungry, the swarm was rising. The emergency alarm woke the entire colony at 3 in the morning. Taemin was dressed and running before the second siren sounded. He reached the command center in 90 seconds. The main screen showed chaos. Outpost 7, the largest mining station in the field, was under attack. The video feed showed creatures pouring from the tunnel walls. They looked like insects made of living stone, with bodies that glowed with internal heat. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. What are they? Someone asked. Renderers, Dr. Krell said, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Silicon-based organisms. They feed on minerals and metals. I have seen records of them in the old archives, but they were thought to be extinct. Commander Velthar stood at his station, his scales pale with stress. How many personnel at Outpost 7? 217, an officer reported. Mixed species? They're requesting immediate assistance. How long until they can evacuate? 30 minutes if they start now. Tell them to begin evacuation procedures. We will establish a defensive perimeter at the outpost entrance. Velthar turned to his communications officer. Send a priority message to Central Command. Request immediate military support. How long until support arrives? Taemin asked. 3 days. Maybe 4. Sir, that's too long. We need to follow procedure, Velthar interrupted. We establish a defensive line. We evacuate personnel. We wait for reinforcements. This is standard protocol for overwhelming force. Standard protocol will get everyone killed. The command center went silent. Every alien turned to look at Taemin. Velthar's eyes narrowed. You forget yourself, human. No, sir. I'm remembering what I was sent here to forget. Taemin pointed at the screen. Those creatures are adapting. Look at them. They're already testing the defensive barriers. They're learning. By the time your reinforcements arrive, Outpost 7 will be gone, and then they'll move to the next outpost, and the next, until they reach this station. We cannot fight them, Dr. Krell said. There are too many. Logic dictates. Logic says you're right, Taemin interrupted. But logic isn't going to save those people. Action will. Velthar stared at him for a long moment. Then the Saurian commander turned away. Begin evacuation of Outpost 7. All personnel are to fall back to the main colony. Establish defensive perimeter here. That is my final order. Yes, sir, the officers responded. Taemin left the command center. He found Hyejin, Bora, Kite, and Yewan waiting in the corridor. They had heard everything through the communication channels. They're abandoning them, Kite said quietly. Standard procedure, Taemin replied. Sacrifice the few to save the many. It's logical. It's safe. He looked at each of them. It's wrong. What are we going to do? Bora asked. We're going to save them. How? Yewan asked. Velthar ordered everyone to fall back. He ordered his people to fall back. He didn't order us. Taemin started walking toward the docking bay. We're humans. We're honey badgers. We don't abandon our territory. Hyejin caught up with him. You know this could end your career again. I know. You know we might not come back. I know that too. Good. She smiled. Then let's go. They gathered what they could. 6 human security personnel volunteered to join them. 2 transport ships, small and fast. Weapons limited but effective. Hyejin packed emergency repair equipment. Bora brought medical supplies. Kite loaded mining explosives. As they prepared to launch, an elderly Vryn approached. He was ancient, his carapace marked with patterns that showed extreme age. "You are Tamin," he said. "Yes, I am Elder Thos. I have studied your species. I have read your histories." The old Vryn reached into his robe and pulled out a data chip. "These are the access codes for Outpost 7's defensive systems. Codes that would normally require command approval. Why are you giving me these?" "Because I am old enough to remember when the Vryn were young. We were not always logical. We were not always careful. Once long ago we fought like you fight, with passion, with fury, with the certainty that some things are worth dying for." Elder Thos placed the chip in Tamin's hand. "We have forgotten this. Perhaps we needed to forget to survive. But today I think we need to remember. Save them, Honey Badger." The transport ships launched 10 minutes later. They flew through the asteroid field at maximum speed, dodging rocks and debris. The journey to Outpost 7 took 20 minutes. It felt like hours. As they approached, Tamin saw the full scale of the attack. The renderers covered the outpost like a living wave. They dissolved metal doors. They melted through defensive barriers. They moved with terrible purpose, consuming everything in their path. "This is insane," one of the security team members said. "Yes," Tamin agreed, "but it's the right kind of insane. Hyjin, can you override the outpost's environmental controls? With Elder Thos's codes?" "Absolutely." "Good. When I give the signal, vent atmosphere from sections 3 through 7. The temperature drop should slow them down. It will also kill anyone still in those sections." "I know. That's why we're going to get everyone out first." The transport ships docked at emergency airlocks on the outpost's upper levels. Tamin led his team into the chaos. The corridors were filled with smoke and screaming. Renderers broke through walls. Personnel ran in every direction. "Organized retreat," Tamin shouted. "Everyone to the upper docking bays, move." His team spread through the outpost, herding people toward the evacuation points. But the renderers were everywhere. Tamin shot 3 of them with his rifle. The bullets barely slowed them down. He switched to incendiary rounds, firing at their glowing cores. That worked better. The creatures recoiled from the heat. "They don't like fire," he called to his team. "Aim for the bright spots." Kite ran past with a group of miners. "Corridor C is blocked." The ceiling collapsed. "Find another route. We're not leaving anyone behind." Bora set up a field hospital at one of the docking bays, treating injured personnel as they arrived. An alien worker, a young Saurian, stumbled in with acid burns on his arm. "Why are you here?" he gasped. "Why didn't you run?" "Because running isn't always the answer," Bora said, bandaging his wounds. "Sometimes you stand and fight." Tamin fought his way deeper into the outpost. A group of workers was trapped in the mining control room, surrounded by renderers. He gathered his security team and attacked. The fighting was brutal and close. The creatures were strong, their bodies hard as stone. But they were slow compared to humans. Tamin and his team moved fast, shooting and dodging, creating openings for the trapped workers to escape. "Fall back," he shouted. "Everyone to the transports." They ran through corridors filled with acid smoke. Behind them, the renderers followed, relentless and hungry. Hyjin's voice came through the communication system. "Tamin, we're running out of time. The creatures are breaking through to the docking bay. How many people are still aboard?" 37. "Mostly in the lower sections. I'll get them. Get everyone else on the transports. Be ready to launch." Tamin, "That's an order." He went down instead of up. Into the darkness. Into the danger. He found small groups of workers huddled in storage rooms and maintenance shafts. He guided them up, fighting off renderers at every turn. His ammunition ran low. His armor was scarred with acid burns. But he kept moving. The last group was in the engineering bay. 15 people, trapped behind a collapsed bulkhead. Tamin used mining charges to blast through the debris. The explosion attracted more renderers. They poured into the corridor, hundreds of them. "Run," he shouted to the workers. "Get to the docking bay." He stood alone in the corridor, firing his last magazine of incendiary rounds. The heat drove the renderers back, but only for moments. They would overwhelm him soon, he knew it. They knew it. Then Hyjin was beside him, firing her own weapon. Kite appeared with a welding torch, using its flame like a weapon. Bora threw chemical grenades that exploded in clouds of burning vapor. "What are you doing?" Tamin shouted over the noise. "What honey badgers do," Hyjin shouted back. "We protect our own." Together they fought their way back to the docking bay. The transports were full of people, more than they were designed to carry. Everyone squeezed together, species mixing without regard to protocol or comfort. Go, Taman ordered. Get them out of here. The transports launched, leaving the outpost behind. Through the windows, they watched the renderers consume what remained. The station that had stood for 10 years dissolved in minutes, but everyone inside was safe. All 217 personnel, saved by 5 humans and 12 volunteers who refused to follow orders, who refused to accept the logical choice. Back at the main colony, Commander Velthar waited at the docking bay. His face was unreadable as Timon's team emerged. The rescued personnel stumbled out after them, exhausted but alive. You disobeyed direct orders, Velthar said. Yes, sir. You risked colony resources on an impossible mission. Yes, sir. You saved everyone. The Saurian's voice softened slightly. How? Taman looked at his team. They were burned, exhausted, and covered in ash, but they were standing. We're honey badgers, sir. It's what we do. The command center was silent as Dr. Krell displayed the sensor data. What they saw made even the calmest officers afraid. The renderer swarm was massive. Millions of organisms, maybe tens of millions, filling the deep tunnels of the asteroid field, and they were all moving in the same direction, toward the main colony. How long do we have? Velthar asked quietly. 18 hours, Dr. Krell replied. Maybe 20 if they encounter resistance in the outer tunnels. And our defensive capabilities? Against a swarm this size? The Vryn scientist's mandibles trembled. We have no capabilities. Our weapons were designed for pirates and small threats. Not this. Never this. Commander Velthar stood at the main display, his scales even paler than before. Around him, his officers waited for orders. For guidance. For the procedure that would save them. Begin evacuation, Velthar said finally. Priority 1, all research data. Priority 2, critical personnel. Priority 3, anyone else who can fit on the ships. What about the colony itself? An officer asked. The colony is lost. We save who we can. We preserve what we can. The rest, Velthar's voice trailed off. The rest we sacrifice. Taman had been standing at the back of the command center. Now he stepped forward. There's another option. There is no other option, Velthar said tiredly. I respect what you did at Outpost 7. You saved lives through courage and quick thinking. But this is different. This is not 200 people. This is millions of creatures. We cannot fight this, we can, Taman said. We won't win by standing and shooting. But we can win by being smarter than they are. Dr. Krell clicked his mandibles in what might have been a laugh. Smarter. They are a hive mind. They adapt. They learn. What makes you think? They're also predictable, Taman interrupted. He brought up a map of the tunnel system on his data pad. Look at their movement pattern. They follow the largest tunnels. They go where the resources are most concentrated. They're not thinking strategically. They're following instinct, following hunger. And how does that help us? Velthar asked. Because we can use their hunger against them. Taman highlighted several points on the map. These are mining charges. Explosives we use to break apart asteroids. We have thousands of them in storage. If we place them correctly, we can collapse the main tunnel system. Bury millions of them under rock. That would take too long, an officer objected. We cannot place that many charges in 18 hours. We don't need to place them all. Just enough to create choke points. Force them into smaller tunnels where we can fight them effectively. Taman looked around the room. Look, I know the math is bad. I know the odds say we should run. But if we run, where do we go? These things don't stop. They'll follow the evacuation ships. They'll find other colonies. Other stations. Eventually, they'll find inhabited worlds. We cannot know that, Dr. Krell said. No, we can't. But are you willing to bet millions of lives that I'm wrong? Taman met each officer's eyes in turn. I'm not asking you to be reckless. I'm asking you to be brave. There's a difference. The command center was quiet. Then Elder Thos, who had been sitting in the corner, spoke. I remember the old records now. The ones I thought were legends. My ancestors faced a swarm like this millennia ago. What happened? Velthar asked. Most of our colonies retreated. They followed procedure. They calculated the odds. They were destroyed anyway because the swarm followed them. The old Vryn stood slowly, but one colony fought. One colony stood its ground with fury and determination. One colony survived. The records called them those who fought like the cornered beast. We honored them, then forgot them, because their methods seemed barbaric to our civilized minds. He looked at Taemin. We called you honey badger in mockery. Perhaps we should have said it in respect. Perhaps we should have remembered that sometimes survival requires the fury of the cornered beast. Velthar closed his eyes. Taemin could see the Saurian commander struggling with every instinct, every protocol, every lesson he had ever learned. The safe choice was evacuation. The logical choice was retreat. But logic hadn't saved Outpost 7. Courage had. If we do this, Velthar said slowly, many of us will die. Yes, Taemin agreed. But if we don't, all of us will die, eventually. And you believe we can win? I believe we can fight. The winning part depends on how well we work together. Velthar opened his eyes and looked at his officers. Vote, stay and fight, or evacuate. Show hands, it was close. Very close. But in the end, more hands went up for fighting than for fleeing. Then we fight, Velthar said. Taemin, you have command of tactical operations. Tell us what you need. The next 18 hours were chaos of a different kind. Organized chaos, purposeful chaos. Taemin divided the colony into teams. Mining crews led by Kite went into the tunnels to place explosive charges. Engineering teams led by Heejin modified the colony systems to vent atmosphere and create temperature barriers. Medical teams led by Bora set up field hospitals at strategic points. The aliens watched the humans work with growing amazement. There was no debate, no committees, no long discussions about optimal procedures. Taemin gave orders and people followed them. When problems arose, they solved them immediately and moved on. It was inefficient by alien standards. It was chaotic. It was also incredibly effective. Yi-1 coordinated communications across all teams. She kept everyone connected, sharing information instantly. When Kite's team hit a problem in Tunnel 6, she connected them with a Saurian engineer who had worked that section. When Heejin needed specific equipment, Ye-1 found it in storage within minutes, but it was the Vrin scientist who surprised everyone most. Dr. Krell approached Taemin in the command center carrying a data chip. I have analyzed the renderer biology, he said. They are vulnerable to extreme heat and extreme cold, but more importantly, they communicate through electromagnetic pulses. If we can disrupt those pulses, we can confuse them. Slow them down. Can we generate that kind of disruption? With the colony's communication arrays? Yes, but it will require shutting down all our own communications during the battle. Do it, Taemin said immediately. You do not want to calculate the risk? Consider alternatives? Dr. Krell, we're already doing something that every calculation says is impossible. One more impossible thing won't make a difference. The Vrin scientist's mandibles clicked in what Taemin had learned was a smile. You know, human, I begin to understand why your species survived its homeworld. Any other species would have gone extinct in your harsh environment. But you thrived, because you do not accept extinction, you simply refuse. It's worked so far. 6 hours before the renderers would reach the colony, Velthar called all personnel to the main assembly hall. Every species was represented. Saurians, Vrin, the small floating jellyfish creatures, even a few crystalline beings who usually avoided physical confrontation. Velthar stood before them. I will not lie to you, he said. The odds of our survival are poor, 12% by even the most generous calculations. Most of us will not see tomorrow. But we will see something more important. We will see ourselves refuse to surrender, refuse to run, refuse to let fear dictate our choices. He paused, then looked at Taemin. The humans taught me something. They taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear. Today we act. Today we fight. Today we are all honey badgers. The hall was quiet for a moment. Then a young Saurian, one of those rescued from Outpost 7, stood up. For the Viridian Reach! Others joined him. For the Viridian Reach! The chant spread through the hall until everyone was on their feet, calling out in a dozen different languages. For the colony, for each other, for survival, Taemin stood with his team. Hyojin gripped his shoulder. Whatever happens, I'm glad I met you. We're not done yet, he replied. I know. But just in case. Bora checked her medical supplies one last time. Kaite tested his detonator. Yuan adjusted her communication headset. They were ready. As ready as anyone could be, the renderers entered the outer tunnel system at hour 17. The first explosive charges detonated, collapsing tunnels and burying thousands of the creatures. But thousands more kept coming. They poured through the remaining tunnels, adapted to the choke points, learning with each meter they advanced. The colony's defenders took positions at predetermined points, weapons ready, minds focused, hearts pounding. Taman stood at the main defensive line watching the sensor display. The swarm was 3 kilometers away, then 2, then 1. "Here they come," he said quietly. "Hold the line. Protect each other. And remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who comes after us." The first renderer rounded the corner. The Battle of Viridian Reach began. The renderers came like a living wave of stone and heat. They poured through the tunnels in numbers that seemed endless. Taman stood at the first defensive line with 50 defenders, all species mixed together. Saurians with heavy weapons, Vryn with acid sprayers, humans with rifles and determination. "Fire!" Taman ordered. The tunnel lit up with weapons fire. The front ranks of renderers fell, their bodies shattering under the concentrated attack. But more came behind them. "Always more. Fall back to checkpoint 2. Taman called. "Controlled retreat!" They ran backward, firing as they moved. Behind them, Kite detonated the first tunnel charges. The explosion shook the ground, collapsing the ceiling and burying hundreds of renderers. The swarm slowed, but only for minutes. They found other routes, smaller tunnels, maintenance shafts. "They're adapting faster than we predicted," Heejin reported over the communication channel. "They're spreading through the system like water finding cracks." "Then we become the dam," Taemin replied. He switched to the command frequency. "All teams activate temperature controls now." Throughout the colony, atmospheric vents opened. Sections of tunnels suddenly dropped to freezing temperatures. The renderers slowed, their silicon bodies becoming brittle in the cold. Defenders concentrated fire on these weakened areas, shattering creatures by the dozens. But there were too many. For every renderer destroyed, 10 more took its place. The defensive lines held for 3 hours, then 4, then 5. Ammunition ran low. Equipment overheated. Personnel collapsed from exhaustion. At checkpoint 5, Bora worked frantically to treat wounded defenders. A Saurian soldier stumbled in, his arm burned by renderer acid. "We cannot hold," he gasped. "There are too many." "We don't need to hold forever," Bora said, bandaging his wound. "Just long enough." "Long enough for what?" "Long enough for us to be heroes instead of victims." The soldier stared at her, then nodded and returned to the fight. In the command center, Dr. Krell monitored the electromagnetic disruptor. "The signal is working," he reported to Velthar. "The renderers are confused. Their coordination is breaking down, but our own communications are barely functioning. Can we increase the disruption?" "Yes, but it will completely shut down our communication grid. We will be fighting blind." Velthar looked at the tactical display. The renderers were pushing hard against checkpoints 3, 7, and 9. If any of those lines broke, the swarm would reach the main colony. "Do it. Send the order before communications go down. All teams fight to their last breath." The disruption increased. The renderer swarm became chaotic, attacking in disorganized waves rather than coordinated assaults. It helped, but not enough. At checkpoint 3, Taemin's team was down to their last weapons. The tunnel before them was filled with renderers, pressing forward despite heavy losses. Heejin fired her last magazine. Kite threw his last explosive. Yawan's rifle clicked empty. "This is it," Heejin said quietly. Taemin looked at his team. They were exhausted, burned, bleeding, but they were still standing. "Still fighting?" "No," he said. "This isn't it. We haven't tried everything yet. What else is there?" He smiled. "The most dangerous weapon humans have, our complete unwillingness to quit." He grabbed a welding torch from a damaged piece of equipment. The flame burned hot and bright. "They hate fire. They fear it. So we become fire." He ran forward into the swarm, torch blazing. The renderers recoiled from the heat. Behind him, his team grabbed anything that could burn, anything that could generate heat. They advanced together, a wall of flame pushing back the tide of stone. Other teams saw what they were doing. Across the colony, defenders improvised. They burned fuel reserves. They overloaded power systems to create heat. They used maintenance flares and emergency torches. The tunnels became an inferno. The renderers retreated, unable to advance through the flames. They tried alternate routes but found more fire, more heat, more determined defenders refusing to surrender. Hour 12 came. Then hour 15. The defenders were running on nothing but will now. Their bodies screamed for rest. Their minds begged to stop. But they didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Elder Thos walked among the defenders offering water and encouragement. He found Taemin at checkpoint 3, still holding his position despite burns and exhaustion. "Why do you fight so hard?" the old Vryn asked. "Because this is my territory now," Taemin replied. "Honey badgers protect their territory, even when the territory is not your homeworld, even when these people mocked you. Especially then, because that's what makes us different. We don't fight for glory. We fight because it's right." At hour 17, the swarm finally broke. The electromagnetic disruption, combined with the constant fire and explosives, shattered their coordination completely. The remaining renderers scattered into the deep tunnels, retreating to their ancient hibernation chambers. Taemin gave the order for one final push. Kite detonated the main tunnel system, collapsing the primary routes into the deep asteroid. Heejin sealed the emergency shafts. Dr. Krell activated environmental locks on the maintenance tunnels. The swarm was trapped, buried under thousands of tons of rock. Silence fell over the colony. Defenders looked at each other in disbelief. They had survived. Somehow, impossibly, they had survived. The reinforcements from Central Command arrived 3 hours later. They expected to find ruins. Instead, they found a battered but intact colony, defended by exhausted heroes of multiple species. The commander of the reinforcement fleet, a senior Saurian admiral, came aboard and stood in the command center. He looked at the damage reports, the casualty lists, the impossible odds they had faced. Then he looked at Commander Velthar. "How?" he asked simply. Velthar turned to Taemin. "The honey badger will explain." Taemin, still covered in ash and burn marks, stood before the admiral. "We fought, sir. That's all. We saw something that needed protecting and we protected it. Against impossible odds. Odds are just numbers. They don't account for will. They don't account for courage. They don't account for people deciding that some things are worth dying for." The admiral studied him for a long moment. "I read your file. You were sent here as punishment for being reckless." "Yes, sir. I think perhaps we misunderstood what recklessness means. Perhaps what we call reckless, humans call necessary." The admiral turned to Velthar. "I am recommending that Taemin be promoted to Chief of Colony Security, and that his defensive tactics be studied at the military academy." "I already made that recommendation, sir," Velthar said. 3 hours ago. Over the following weeks, the Viridian Reach colony rebuilt. The damaged sections were repaired. New defenses were installed based on Taemin's tactics. And slowly, word spread throughout the inhabited systems. A colony had faced extinction and survived. Not through superior technology, not through retreat, but through courage, determination, and the absolute refusal to surrender. The term honey badger began appearing in military reports across multiple species. No longer an insult, it became a designation of respect. Elite units wanted the name. Defensive strategies were named after them. Even the Saurian Military Academy created a new course called Honey Badger Protocols. 6 months after the battle, an alien journalist came to interview Taemin. They sat in the rebuilt observation deck, watching construction crews work on the outer sections. "The entire galaxy wants to know," the journalist said. "Why did you fight?" "Every calculation said you should flee." Taemin watched the stars. "Because fleeing isn't always survival. Sometimes survival means standing your ground. Sometimes it means protecting something bigger than yourself. We called this place a colony, a temporary station. But somewhere during that fight, it became home. And you don't abandon home. But you're human. This isn't your homeworld. No, but these are my people now. All of them. Every species. Every individual. When you defend something together, when you bleed together, when you refuse to quit together, you become family." The journalist looked around the observation deck. Saurians worked alongside Vryn. Humans collaborated with crystalline beings. Species that had rarely mixed before now worked as unified teams. "You changed them," the journalist said. "No, we changed each other. They taught me patience, strategy, planning. I taught them courage, action, determination. We met in the middle and became something better." Earth Command offered Taemin a full pardon and a prestigious position. He declined. The Viridian Reach was his home now, his territory, his responsibility. Hyejin found him in his office one evening working on new defensive plans. You know you're famous now, right? The Honey Badger of Viridian Reach, they're writing books about you. About us, he corrected. I didn't do this alone. True, but you led. You refused to quit when everyone else wanted to run. That matters. Maybe, but you know what matters more? He looked at her. Everyone survived. 217 people from Outpost 7, 300 from the colony. All because we decided that some things are worth fighting for. Are you happy here? Taman thought about the question. He had been sent to Viridian Reach as punishment. A demotion, a way to remove him from important work. But he had found something more important than any prestigious position. Yes, he said finally. I'm happy. This is where I belong. Outside the window, the asteroid field slowly rotated.